Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for coming. This is now the third session I think we're doing on the UNOPS Provident Fund. And as you may be aware, this is targeted towards you as Provident Fund participants. So it has nothing to do with the Provident Fund administration that we do within ICA admin. So these lovely ladies, Sunhae and Savitri, have prepared this presentation to basically walk you through three important dimensions of Provident Fund. First, there's an overview, the theory behind the scheme itself. Then we have some investment information, kind of investment 101, if you will. And then there is the practical information that you need to access ZEO, which is Zurich's online platform. And then at the end, you can, of course, ask whatever questions that you may have. Overall, it takes about 30 minutes. So we appreciate your attention and your participation, and I think we will begin. Thank you.
Okay. As Sunny mentioned, today we'll talk about Provident Fund, and we'll start with Provident Fund overview. Okay, so I will talk about the overview of Provident Fund, and then the eligibility, UNOPS vesting, voluntary contribution enrollment, Provident Fund outpayment, and lastly, Provident Fund exceptional withdrawal. Okay, starting with Provident Fund overview, as you all might already know, UNOPS Provident Fund is a savings scheme for ICA that aims to help you save and plan for your future, so that when you leave UNOPS, you will have a lump sum amount for your future. And there are two types of contribution. The first one is mandatory contribution. This is the 7.5% contribution that is deducted from ICA salary every month. And at the same time, UNOPS will contribute at the rate of 15%. And the second one is voluntary contribution. This is the additional contribution for those who would like to enroll more than 7.5%. And it is also the contribution for international ICA and partner ICA as well. And UNOPS Provident Fund was initiated back in 2014, and the first contribution that we deducted is from October 2014, and then later on we offered the service to partner ICA personnel in 2016. The contribution that is deducted from your salary will be sent to Zurich International Life, which is part of Zurich Insurance Group, and then they will be the one who take care and manage the fund. Okay, moving on to the eligibility. Based on our PQMS, those who can participate or enroll in Provident Fund should have a contract issued and managed by UNOPS, and it has to be an ICA contract, and the duration of the contract should be 3 months or more, and it has to be monthly or regular month contract. From the table here, you'll see that there is a difference of the eligibility between local ICA and international ICA. For local ICA, they are eligible to enroll in both mandatory contribution and voluntary contribution. But for international ICA, their only option is to enroll in voluntary contribution, and there will not be any UNOPS contribution for this part. And this goes to the same for partner ICA personnel. They can only enroll in voluntary contribution. Okay, for UNOPS vesting, UNOPS vesting is the portion of the amount that you will receive from UNOPS contribution, and it will be calculated based on your participation period. So from the table here, if you participate in Provident Fund for less than 12 months, you will not get any UNOPS contribution. But if you contributed for 12 months, you will get 1/3 of UNOPS contribution. For 24 months, you will get 2/3, and for 36 months, you will get the whole amount of UNOPS contribution. And if the period falls between 12 to 36 months, it will be calculated prorated. For voluntary contribution, Has anybody here enrolled in the VC? Okay. Yeah. Before we used to have a biannual campaign, so you can only enroll in like twice a year. But since last year, we changed the process to be on a rolling basis, so you can opt in and opt out from your VC anytime. For local ICA contract, this is the option for you to increase your contribution from 7.5 to be 10, 12.5, or 15%. For international ICA or partner ICA, this is the option to enroll in and participate in Provident Fund, so they can choose from 7.5, 10, 12.5, and 15%. But again, like there will not be UNOPS contribution. And for local ICA converting to international ICA, they can maintain like their accumulated vesting scale from their local ICA if they enroll in the VC. Like for example, if a personnel was under the local ICA contract for 2 years, and then the contract is changed to international ICA, at that time they will be entitled to UNOPS contribution at the rate of like 2/3 of UNOPS contribution. But if they enroll in the VC for another year, then in total the person will be contributed in Provident Fund for 3 years, and then they'll get like the whole amount of UNOPS contribution under their LICA contract. And in order to do so, the personnel must submit the VC form within 6 months after LICA contract ends. Okay. For Provident Fund outpayment, when you separate from UNOPS, the personnel can like have the option to withdraw the outpayment right away, or they can defer the outpayment for 6 months. And the amount that they will receive will be both their own contribution and any entitled amount of UNOPS contribution. And the request for the Provident Fund outpayment has to be done online through Provident Fund outpayment tool. And then after the request is created, we will verify all the information and send the separation report to Zurich. And then it will take around 6 weeks for the payment to be transferred to personnel bank account. And here's how Provident Fund outpayment tool looks. So you have to create the outpayment on the left side, My Provident Fund outpayment, and then click Create Request. And then the system will prompt you to put in your personal email address. And the reason that you have to put your personal email address, not UNOPS email address, is because once the payment transfer is done, Zurich will send you the notification email about the transfer, and they will send to the email that you put into the system. And for those who did not create any request, after 6 months of the separation date, the system will like auto create the request for them. So their name will be included in the separation report automatically. Okay, apart from Provident Fund outpayment, we also have exceptional withdrawal. Based on the PQMS, the personnel can request for the exceptional withdrawal once a year, but it has to be under exceptional and compelling circumstance. And the request will be reviewed by Provident Fund Committee whether they will accept or reject the request. And if it is accepted, the amount that can be withdrawn can be only up to 80% of your own contribution only. And the process to request for the exceptional withdrawal is to submit the exceptional withdrawal form. It will be sent to Provident Fund direct email, and then provide the supporting document to prove your circumstance. And then I will forward all the information to Provident Fund Committee, and then they will decide whether they will reject or accept your request. And if it is accepted, I will send the email to Zurich to inform them to withdraw the amount. And I would like to highlight that it is only for exceptional and compelling circumstance. As you can see from the screenshot, it is screenshot from the exceptional withdrawal form, and it said that in medical cases, sudden life-threatening conditions, it will be considered as exceptional and compelling. For like personal issue or family issue, it will not be considered exceptional and compelling.
Does anybody have questions so far? No? Okay, so now you all know how you contribute into the Provident Fund, and now you know how to withdraw the money upon the separation. And now I'll talk about what happens during the time that it is in the Provident Fund. So for investment, who here is familiar with investments? Have you ever bought any funds in Thailand or outside Thailand? Stocks? Who has a bank account? Everyone has a bank account at least, right? So you have an interest rate on the bank account, right? Mm-hmm. So these are the different types of investments that I talked about. So very briefly on the Investment 101, we always talked about risks and return. So a lot of the times we say the higher the risk, the higher the return. It means that when there is a higher return, there's more likelihood that you may actually have a chance to have loss in that investment. So a lot of the times, the instruments such as cash are considered very low risk, and at the same time, there's a very low return. What's the percentage of interest rate right now in Thailand in the savings account? 0.0, not even 1%, right? It doesn't need to beat the inflation. Second class of the investment that they considered is a little bit higher risk than the money market. The cash is bonds or security like government bonds or corporate bonds and things like that. And another type of investment is maybe the property. They call it a little bit of a medium risk, medium return. Maybe you want to buy an apartment, condo, and rent it out and have a rental income and things like that. And most of the time what we say equity or stock market is one of the higher risk assets where we actually expect a higher rate of return. You have return in terms of dividends sometimes, or sometimes the capital gain. Sometimes you bought it at 10 baht, it goes up to 15 baht, and you sell it and you get 5 baht as a profit. And so these kind of returns are more lucrative, but at the same time, as you all know, the stock prices go up and down. So there's a lot of more fluctuations and variations in the prices, and therefore there's more risks. So there's conservative and growth models in these investment strategies. And Zurich, the Provident Fund provider, have given us a choice of different funds that has different characteristics on their risks and return. So while the fund itself is managed by Zurich, the investment advice is given by the global consulting firm called Mercer, and they are the one who is our investment advisor. What they do is that they scan all the possible different funds that are available, and they recommend Zurich what type of investment they should make for each particular fund. So in one fund, they could buy a number of different things. They might, invest into some bond, some security, some stocks, but all the combination of it will have a specific objective. So each of the fund will have an objective to its character, and it will invest according to their objective. For example, there are 4 investment options available for UNOPS Provident Fund, and they represent different level of risks and different expected growth. And they're called defensive fund, medium risk or moderate growth fund, high risk growth fund, or Sharia compliant fund. I'll tell you more about it in detail in the next slide. So the risk level, if you will, goes from the very defensive fund is the lower risk, and it goes higher and higher and higher in risk. Okay, and the highest risk in this group of funds would be the Sharia Equity Fund. Equity fund is stock market, basically. Sharia Equity is a name. Sharia is a name that they actually use for those companies that are compliant with the Sharia law, which is an Islamic law. So there are certain criteria, like they're not supposed to bear interest rate. If it's like they're not supposed to invest in like alcohol beverages kind of companies and things like that. So we are assured that there are very good corporate governed and CG or corporate governance companies that they invest into. And so that would be the most higher risk, and also, again, expecting the higher return. Out of all the investments that we do, or the provident fund that we pay into Zurich, there are three parts that we talked about, right? There's one, which is the mandatory portion. There's another one, which is our voluntary contribution portion. And also there's a 15% that UNOPS contribute towards your provident fund. Out of these three parts, the UNOPS part is by default goes into defensive fund. This is the fund that we do not want you to take more risk than the lowest risk. And so that you are almost have a less chance of losing the principal amount of this money. However, for your portion, the mandatory portion and the voluntary contribution portion, you're able to choose between these funds according to whether or not you're able to handle the risk or not. And in the investment terms, if you have already studied investments or if you're familiar, it's called risk appetite. So if your risk appetite is very high and you're able to have the stomach for high risk, you can always go into growth fund, the Sharia equity fund. But if you feel like you do not want to lose your principal or the very first amount of money that you contributed in, then you might want to stay in the defensive fund and moderate growth fund. The fund objective that I mentioned earlier, it explains what kind of objective that they want to do, but I'm not going to read this, but I'll tell you where you can find this information. If you go to Fund Center, which we will explain later, you can download these fund fact sheets. In the fund fact sheet, they will tell you what sort of investment they actually have. For example, the Defensive USD Blend Fund, I'm not sure if you can see, I'll just make it a little bit bigger. You will see that they have invested mostly in the money market, which is like the bonds and other low yield, interest yielding instruments. US fixed interest, German, UK fixed interest. So you can see a lot of the fixed interest money market. And the target splits are mostly government bonds, time deposits, and investment grade bonds, which you would expect that you might have maybe 3%, 4% return per year. And in the fund fact sheet, you can also see the historical return. So for example, for defensive fund, inception says it's been doing 10%, but last year it made 1.8% return. In the last 6 months, it made 0.36. In the last 3 years, they made a cumulative of 10.24%. So you can see the historical return for this defensive fund. Again, slightly higher one, which is a moderate US dollar fund. You will see that the investment right now is similar, but it also has others in a significant amount. And these others may have things like equity, like stock market, not just interest rate. So it has a mix between some percentage in the stock market, in the equity market, as well as the fixed income market, securities. So if you look at their historical return, for example, in 3 years, it has done 19.67% compared to 10%. And in the last year, it did 5% compared to less than 1% in the defensive fund, right? If you go a little bit higher rate, which we expect higher return, you'll see that majority of it is in equity fund. So they have 30 significant amount, 35% on the US equity, and also another significant amount in government bond as well, but a lot less than the first two funds that you saw. And if you look at the historical return, in 3 years, it did up to 27.81%. So it's significantly higher, right? But at the same time, you have to understand that there has been times where it fluctuates. So if you look at the graph, there are times that it actually went down lower than par value, but over time it has recovered, right? So if you're thinking of Provident Fund, it's towards your retirement or end of separation. So it's not something that you would invest only for short term. So if you think about something that you want to invest in long term, medium to long term, it wouldn't be too bad to invest in these higher risk assets, considering that you'll be investing for a long time. Lastly, our current share fund is in HSBC Islamic Global Equity Index. And most of the investment are in stock market, in technology, healthcare, consumer goods, and all that. We have some stocks in Apple, Microsoft, even Facebook. Everyone knows Facebook. ExxonMobil, and etc., even Google. So this, if you look at the historical return, have been doing more than 70% in the last 5 years. You see here. And in last year alone, it did 16.48%, which is a lot higher return than the first three funds that I showed you. But again, if you have invested in this since last year in the middle of the year, there was a period of time where there's a dip. So worst 3-month return, it actually did lose money up to 8%. But over time, it recovered quite quickly up to this percent. So it really depends on your risk appetite, whether or not you're able to see if you'd be able to handle when the price goes down. Yeah, but thinking in terms of long term, it's up to you whether or not you want to make this return or not. So how many of you have actually looked into these options before? The Provident Fund. Are you interested now that you have 10 more percent? So we'll tell you where you can make these choices in the switching and the redirection of the fund. So right now, by default, all your contribution, the UNOPS portion, your mandatory portion, and the VC goes directly into the default fund, which is the lowest risk one. From there, you can switch whatever fund you have and buy into a new fund. So whatever number of units that you have in that fund, you can sell all of them and buy into a higher risk fund if you'd like. Or you can keep the fund as is, but you can redirect all the future contribution to the new fund. Then you will have some funds, the existing funds that you have, you will keep it as is, and then all the new ones that you will redirect into the new funds. Or you can switch and redirect. You can switch to the higher risk. Now that you realize that the HSBC equity fund is the most higher return and you want to switch this, you can sell all the funds you have in the defensive fund, buy into the new fund, and all of your future contribution, you can contribute into that as well. Or you can do a combination. Yeah, and we'll show you where you can do it in the next slide. Any questions?
How many times can we switch?
You can switch as much as you can, as much as you like.
Like in a month, any
In a month, you can do whenever. Yeah.
Are there any administration charge for switching?
All the charges, there's no charges in switching and redirecting the fund. But in managing a fund, there's a fund manager, right? And of course, these fund managers are supposed to be very experts and they know how to calculate the risks and return and do the valuation of the different stocks and different asset classes. So there are some admin costs, but this price and this administrative charges have already been incorporated in the fund price. So you will not see any charges deducted from your account per se. So no, in that sense, you do not have an extra charge to switch or redirect. But then again, we only contribute once a month, yeah? So whenever you actually pay the salary out, that's when you actually get the money transferred into that Provident Fund account. So even if you switch 2 or 3 times in a month, the actual contribution part, the new contribution, would not get contributed into your new fund until the next salary payment, right? But during that time, with the existing amount of funds you want to switch around, you are able to do it as much as you like. There's no limit.
And which currency are we investing this in?
All our Zurich investment currency is in US dollars.
Also, we have an exchange rate risk and everything.
There is only exchange rate risk when we're actually taking the money out, right? But at the time that when we're buying into the fund, every month, it's dollar average, right? So every month we will be contributing every month. It's not like we contribute a big lump sum at the same time. And while we're switching back and forth, it's all in US dollars, so there's no currency risk there.
Okay.
Can we like separate the amounts? Like we want 10% of our contribution in the Sharia fund, and we want like 90% in the like.
Yes, you can. You can choose up to 4 different asset classes, so you can have 25% each, or you can have 50% of one thing and 50% of something other, as long as it adds up to 100%. Yeah. Good. So we'll tell you where you can do it. Oh, this is the Zurich Fund Center. The information that I showed you earlier on PDF, when you go into Fund Center, you can click on this fund fact sheet. So if you click on this fund fact sheet, you'll download a PDF file which I showed you earlier, and it will show you that information about different objectives, different asset classes that it's invested in, and the historical returns.
Okay. Moving on to the Zio. Has anybody ever logged into Zio? No? Okay. So
Now you want to, right?
I'll show you how you can manage your Provident Fund account. Okay. For those who have never logged into Zio, Zio is the internet-based inquiry and administration support system that let you manage your Provident Fund account. The first contribution that is sent to Zurich will create your Provident Fund policies, and then they will send you the activation email to access Zio. And when you activate the Zio, you will have to put in your personal identification number and your security questions. And here's the link to Zio. So once you activate your Zio access, here's the login page. So every time you have to put in your username and password, and then your personal identification number that you put when you first activate the account. And then here's the landing page for Zio. When you log into Zio, you will see that they will show you your total valuation of the amount at the first line here. This is the amount for both your own contribution and UNOPS contribution. And the second one is the entitlement value. It's the entitlement amount estimated when you log into Zio based on the day that you log in. So you might be contributing for 1 year, so your entitlement will not be the whole amount for both UNOPS and your own contribution, so it will show you the entitlement amount. And for the important menu that we would like you to see is the fund sender. As Sanjay mentioned, you can see the fund price, fund fact sheet, and then all the fund related information. And rate of return calculator, you can calculate your return based on the policy and the period that you put in. And also contribution history, fund switching. And then if you go to my account, you'll see that they will show you the policies of your Provident Fund account. The first one is EE personal. This is your own contribution, your mandatory contribution. And the second one is ER organization. This is the UNOPS contribution. And additional voluntary contribution, it's the VC and voluntary contribution for those who enroll in the VC. So it will be like split into 3 policies. And at the left side, you can there's a menu like at the landing page. There will be like contribution history, fund switching, investment strategy that you can check. And if you pull out the report, you can pull out the report based on each policy and the period that you put in here, and it will goes to your inbox. So the report that you can pull can be the contribution report or statement report. Okay, for fund switching, if you would like to switch your fund, you have to go to My Account, Fund Switching, and then click Switch and or Redirect Funds. And then it will show this page. So you will have to choose whether you would like to redirect only, switch only, or switch and redirect. And once you choose, for example, if I choose redirect only, I will have to select the policy that I would like to redirect. And then if you notice, this can only be your own contribution or policies. UNOPS policy cannot be changed. And once you choose your policy, then you will have to choose the fund that you would like to redirect to and the percentage to buy the funds. And as Sanhee said, it has to be equal to 100%.
So this is the page where you would decide which fund and how much percent you would like to put. And that's the percentage. This is the arrow where you can select either defensive, moderate, or growth blend, or the HSBC equity fund. And then you put the percentage there and click add.
Okay, for nomination of beneficiary, as you may not logged into Zio before, I will show you the one important thing that you should do in your Zio account. To nominate your beneficiary, you will have to go to personal details, beneficiary details, and then create beneficiary details. And then when you add beneficiary, you have to put the name, surname, date of birth, relationship, and then the percentage should be equal to 100% as well. And the reason that we would like you to nominate the beneficiary is because if something happens, your Provident Fund outpayment will be transferred to the person that you nominate as beneficiary in your Zio. But if you did not nominate anyone in your Zio, we will use the designation of beneficiary form that you signed when you first joined UNOPS. So you can update your beneficiary details here. Okay, for more information about Provident Fund, you can check the PQMS intranet or Zio at Fund Center if you would like to learn more about fund information. And if you have any question or problem, you can send the email to providentfund@unops.org, or if you would like to ask fund-related question, you can also send the email to Zurich Point at corporate.pensions@zurich.com. Is there any question?
For those of you who haven't logged into Zio for a long time and you've forgotten your password, you can click on the forgotten password and it will actually alert us and we can reset the password for you. So if you have trouble getting in, please let us know and we can assist you. Yeah.
Sorry, I have a few questions actually. If a person is separated from the organization, for how long a person can keep Like, or it is mandatory to immediately submit for the withdrawal of the investment?
We mentioned earlier in the presentation that when a person separates, they're able to keep the provident fund up to 6 months,
Not behind that.
not longer than that.
Is-
After 6 months, the system will auto create a payment request automatically.
Okay.
So the system is designed to pay out the.
And a staff member cannot voluntarily add to this scheme, right? If, for example, I'm a staff, because this is for ECA and LEGA, right? If I want to also part of this provident fund voluntarily, it is not possible, right?
I'm afraid you do not have a choice. You have to have an ICA contract in order to be a member.
I can help you manage for the time being. Just transfer to my account.
And so the legal members, they have the choice to increase to 10% or 15 or
Yes.
20%.
So for LECA contract holders, you have mandatory contribution of 7.5%, but this can be increased up to 15%. So there are 3 choices: 7.5, 10%.
Yeah. But organization contribution is fixed, just for clarification.
Yes,
for
yes.
those that-
Organization is fixed at 15%.
15%. No more questions?
I'm still, I have a question for the entitled value one. There's a two line, I think,
In the start page.
in the home page. Like the first one is a valuation, so it's a contribution from UNOPS and yourself.
Yes.
But for the second one, I don't understand what is the entitled, like, you have mentioned, but I still wonder.
Yeah, so the second line is the entitlement value. Like, for example, if you have been contributing in Provident Fund for 2 years, at the date that you join, at the date that you log into Zio, it will like calculate the period that you have been contributing in Provident Fund. So it will be your total amount of your own contribution and the entitlement value of UNOPS contribution for 2 years.
So earlier we mentioned that to be eligible for 100% of UNOPS contribution, you need to be working for UNOPS for more than 3 years. So that value is prorated, calculated according to the vesting period.
Yeah, because that's why the second line is lower than the other.
Yes.
Yes. But once you've contributed more than 3 years, the first line and the second line will be the same.
And for the VC one, like there's a mandatory one which is like the defensive one. And could you please go to like the previous slide, or maybe this slide on the top left, the in the yellow highlight, the third one. So for people who never changed the one before, so this is one.
The line will not show.
Okay. So you have
Only those who enroll in the VC, then they will have 3 lines.
Okay. And how do we pay for the VC one?
It will be deducted from your salary.
How can we change our contributions?
You can request a voluntary contribution form. You can complete the voluntary contribution form and send it to Provident Fund, and we will update your contribution percentage in the system. And so every month when you get the salary, it will deduct additional percentage that you have indicated in your voluntary contribution form.
So the rate is like maximum to 15%.
Yes.
Okay.
Is there a certain like deadline for each month? Like if I want this month contribution to be changed, and then
If you fill in the form, it will say that the effective of the VC will be the following month of the receipt of the form.
okay.
So if you receive it in October, it will be deducted from November onwards.
So for example, like I joined UNOPS in 1st of January, but this one will be deducted on the second month that I work in UNOPS, right? Not the first month.
The actual mandatory portion, it will be deducted from the very beginning of the month. But the voluntary contribution, if you want to contribute additional amount, that additional amount you need to request through a Provident Fund by filling out the form. And when we receive the fund this month, it will be deducted from next month onwards. So for example, right now, if you only contribute the mandatory contribution of 7.5% and you would like to increase this to 15%, then your additional contribution would be additional 7.5%. That additional 7.5% will be deducted from November onwards if you receive the form in this month, October.
Okay.
So if you first join UNOPS in January, we will submit the contribution to Zurich the following month, which will be in February. So in your Zio, it will show the date that Zurich received the amount. So it will not show January, it will show February. But it is the January contribution.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
And this will be on top of the organization's contribution of 7.5, right, as well. So you could end up with, if you wanted to go full on, then it'd be 15 plus 7.5 on top.
No.
So it's 15 plus 7.5 plus 7.5, so
Yeah.
it's 30% savings.
Okay, yeah.
Any other questions? Are you all excited to log into Zio now?
And at the end of September, Zurich just sent an email to everyone about the investment, so you can check the email. It will show you the video to log into Zio and everything. Yeah. So if there is no more question, it's the end of the presentation, and we would like to thank you everyone for attending, and we hope that it will be useful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming.